What if I told you the secret to beating modern distraction isn't some new app, a fancy planner, or another color-coded to-do list? What if the answer wasn't about doing more, but about doing something ancient, something that's been working for over 2,500 years? This is the story of a professional who we'll call Anna. And Anna, like a lot of us, was at her breaking point. Her world was a constant storm of notifications, deadlines, and the soul-crushing pressure to always be on. She was drowning in digital noise, her focus shattered. As a last resort, feeling like she had nothing to lose, she turned to an old Buddhist technique. What she found wasn't a mystical chant or some strange ritual. It was a practical, scientifically proven method, a brain hack that can physically rewire your brain's attention system, tear down the architecture of distraction, and kill procrastination for good. Stay with me, because what worked for Anna is a tool that's available to every single one of us. 1. The modern epidemic of distraction. Let's be honest. How many browser tabs do you have open right now? How many times have you picked up your phone in the last hour for no real reason? We're living in an age of engineered distraction. Our attention is the new gold, and every app and every notification is designed to steal it. The result is a collective state of mental burnout. This isn't just a feeling. The numbers are pretty staggering. Some studies show that nearly 90% of people admit to procrastinating for at least an hour a day. That can add up to almost 2 full months of your life, every single year, lost to the land of I'll do it later. And this isn't harmless. A whopping 94% of people say that procrastination makes them unhappy. It is a source of massive stress and anxiety, a cycle of short-term relief that comes with devastating long-term costs. So, why do we do it? Why do we knowingly sabotage our own goals? It's not because you're lazy. Procrastination is really about managing emotions. When a task makes us feel bored, anxious, or overwhelmed, our brain's first priority is to make that bad feeling go away. That's our present bias in action. We crave immediate gratification over long-term rewards. Checking email or scrolling social media gives us a tiny hit of dopamine, a little pleasure boost. It makes us feel better right now, even though we know we're just creating more stress for ourselves down the road. Picture Anna at her desk. She has a huge report to write. Just the thought of it is overwhelming. The fear of not doing it perfectly, the sheer size of the task, it all creates this powerful urge to escape. So her brain finds an out. She tells herself, I'll just clean out my inbox first. An hour later, the inbox is spotless, the report is untouched, and a new feeling has joined the anxiety, guilt. She's trapped in a vicious cycle. Avoid the task to avoid the anxiety, which creates more anxiety because the task is still there. The modern world has put this problem on steroids. Our phones and laptops are the perfect escape hatches, and every time we switch from the report, to our email, to a news alert, we pay a cognitive price. It's called context switching, and it demolishes our productivity. We make more mistakes, and the original task takes way longer than if we'd just stuck with it. Anna isn't just fighting her own mind, she's fighting an entire ecosystem built to break her focus. It's a quiet desperation that millions of us feel every single day. 2. The ancient answer hidden in plain sight. For centuries, Buddhist philosophy has had a name for this state of mind: monkey mind. It's a brilliant metaphor. Imagine a restless monkey is in charge of your head, swinging wildly from one branch to the next, chasing every random thought, sound, and impulse. It's chattering, unruly, and impossible to control. This isn't a new problem born from our smartphones, it's just part of the untrained human condition. The solution, proposed 2,500 years ago, wasn't to cage the monkey or yell at it. The solution was to train it gently, patiently. This training is a type of meditation called samatha. In the ancient Pali language, samatha means calm or tranquility. It's the practice of developing a calm, stable, and focused mind. And let's be clear, this has nothing to do with religion. You don't need to believe in anything specific. Samatha is basically a workout for your attention. It's a system for taking that wild monkey mind and turning it into a calm, powerful tool. This is where Anna's story takes a turn. Drowning in her own mental chaos, she stumbled on samatha meditation, not in a temple, but in a book about neuroscience. She was skeptical. How could just sitting there and paying attention to her breath solve a problem that a dozen productivity apps had failed to fix? But desperation is a powerful motivator. She decided to give it a shot. Her first few tries were, as you might expect, a total disaster. The second she closed her eyes, her mind exploded. Worries about the report, replaying an awkward conversation, a sudden urge to check her email, the lyrics to a song she hadn't heard in years. The monkey was having a party. She felt like a failure. I can't meditate, she thought, which is what almost everyone thinks when they start. But the instructions she read had one crucial piece of advice. The goal is untaint an empty mind. The goal is to simply notice when the mind has wandered, and then gently, without judgment, bring it back. That's it. The wandering isn't a failure. It's the opportunity. It's the moment the real training happens. She realized she wasn't failing at meditation. She was just experiencing the exact thing she was trying to fix. And with that small shift, she kept going. understanding that it wasn't about finding some perfect Zen state. It was about one simple action, over and over, the gentle return to right now. 3. Rewiring your brain, the neuroscience of focus. What Anna was doing in her chair for 10 minutes a day wasn't just finding a moment of peace. It was a radical act of neurological renovation. This ancient practice is a powerful way to trigger neuroplasticity, the brain's amazing ability to change its own structure based on experience. Every time she noticed her mind wander and brought it back to her breath, she was physically weakening the old neural pathways of distraction and strengthening the new ones for focus. She was literally rewiring her brain. To get how this works, you need to meet two key players in your brain: the default mode network and the anterior cingulate cortex. First up, the default mode network, or DMN. Think of the DMN as your brain's autopilot. It's a network that lights up when you're not focused on anything in particular. When you're daydreaming, worrying about the future, or replaying the past. For procrastinators, the DMN is often overactive. It's like having a radio blaring static while you're trying to read. Brain scan research shows that when we practice mindful attention, activity in the DMN quiets down significantly. Every time you practice samatha, you're training your brain to turn down the volume on that internal chatter. You start to create a little space between you and your thoughts, so you're no longer swept away by every random impulse. The second player is the anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC. If the DMN is the daydreaming autopilot, the ACC is the focused, engaged pilot. The ACC is a part of the brain that's crucial for attentional control. It helps you spot conflicts, like wanting to work versus wanting to watch TV. Manage your emotions and consciously point your focus where you want it to go. It's the part of your brain that says, okay, pay attention to this now. Studies have shown that long-term meditation can actually lead to physical changes in the ACT, making it denser and strengthening its connections. So when you procrastinate, your overactive DMN is pulling you into a spiral of daydreams and anxiety. By practicing samatha, you do two things at once. You quiet the DMN, reducing the background noise, and you strengthen your ACC, the very part of the brain that can override the DMN and keep your attention locked in. Think of it like going to the gym. Your attention is a muscle. Every time your mind wanders and you gently guide it back to your breath, you're doing a bicep curl for your brain. The first few times, it's frustrating and you can barely lift the weight, but you keep at it, and the muscle gets stronger. It's the same with your attention. The act of returning your focus over and over is the rep that builds the strength. This 2,500-year-old brain hack isn't wishful thinking. It's targeted neurological exercise. For the practice, a step-by-step guide to the brain hack. So, how do you actually do this? The beauty of samatha is its simplicity. No weird rituals, no required beliefs, just a direct, practical way to train your mind. Here's how you can start today. Step 1. Find a spot and a posture. You don't need a special cushion or a silent monastery. Just find a quiet place where you can be left alone for 10 minutes. Sit on a chair or on the floor. The key is a posture that's both relaxed and alert. If you're on a chair, keep your feet flat on the floor and your spine straight but not stiff. Slouching makes you sleepy, and being too rigid creates tension. Let your hands rest in your lap. You can close your eyes or just keep a soft, unfocused gaze on the floor in front of you. Step 2. Choose your anchor, the breath. The breath is the perfect anchor for your attention. Why? It's always with you. It's always happening right now, and it's neutral. You can't breathe yesterday's breath or tomorrow's breath. It only ever exists in the present moment. Your task is to simply rest your attention on the physical feeling of breathing. Pick one spot, like the tip of your nose or your belly rising and falling. Feel the air coming in and feel it going out. Don't try to control it. Just let your body breathe naturally. Your only job is to watch. Step 3. Begin to focus. Settle your attention on that spot. Feel the entire journey of one in-breath. Feel the little pause at the top. Feel the entire journey of the out. Maybe silently note in and out in your head to help you get started. Try to stay with it. Get curious. Just watch. Step 4. The most important step. The gentle return. Within seconds, your mind will wander. A thought, a sound, a memory, an itch. This is not a mistake. This is not a failure. This is the moment your workout actually begins. The second you realize your mind has drifted, you've already succeeded. That moment of awareness is mindfulness. Now, for the most critical part, gently let go of whatever distracted you and kindly guide your attention back to the breath. The tone you take with yourself here is everything. Don't get annoyed. Imagine you're training a little puppy. If the puppy wanders off, you don't yell at it. You gently guide it back. Treat your mind with that same kindness. That act of noticing and returning is the single most powerful thing you can do to rewire your brain for focus. You will do this over and over and over. Some days you might bring your mind back 100 times in 10 minutes. That's a great session. That's 100 reps at the mental gym. The point isn't how long you stay focused. It's how consistently and kindly you return when you stray. 5. The transformation beyond procrastination. Let's go back to Anna one last time. She kept up her 10-minute daily practice. At first, the changes were subtle, but after a couple of weeks, something shifted. One afternoon, she sat down to work on that tough proposal. The usual wave of anxiety and the urge to check her phone started to bubble up, but this time it felt smaller, less like a tidal wave and more like a ripple. Because of her practice, she had built the skill of noticing a feeling without having to immediately act on it. She saw the urge to procrastinate arise, and instead of getting swept away, she just acknowledged it, let it pass, and gently brought her focus back to the first sentence of the proposal. It was a tiny victory, but it felt huge. For the first time in years, she felt like she was in the driver's seat of her own mind. This is the real transformation. It goes way beyond just beating procrastination. As you build this muscle of attention, the benefits spill into every part of your life. You become calmer and less reactive. You listen better in conversations. Your thinking gets clearer. You unlock a new level of productivity that comes from calm, sustained focus, not from brute force. And this practice of samatha is just the beginning. It builds the stable foundation for another type of meditation called vipassana, or insight meditation, which leads to an even deeper understanding of your own mind and a more lasting sense of well-being. It all starts with wanting to stop putting things off, and it can lead to a fundamental upgrade in your happiness in your life. The fight against procrastination isn't about finding the perfect app. It's an inside job. Procrastination isn't a character flaw. It's a symptom of an overstimulated, distracted mind. And the best news is, your mind is trainable. This 2,500-year-old technique is a practical, science-backed method for taking back your most valuable resource, your own attention. So, here's my challenge to you. Don't just take my word for it. Try it. Commit to just 10 minutes of this practice every day for 1 week. See what happens. We'd love to hear about your experience and your opinions in the comments section below. What's the one thing that distracts you the most? If this video was helpful, please show your support by liking and subscribing to the School of Buddha, and share it with the ones you care about. And if you want to practice guided meditation, be sure to check out the special podcast series on our channel. Remember, you have the power to tame that monkey mind. You have the ability to rewire your brain. It all starts with one simple breath and the decision to begin.